Have you ever gotten a message that felt like a punch to the gut one that made you question everything you thought you knew about family? That's where Rebecca Wilson's story begins. At 34, a rising star lawyer in Chicago, she's in the middle of a high-stakes meeting when her phone buzzes with a text from her father. "Don't come to the family reunion. We're cutting ties." Just 14 words. But they carried 20 years of conditional love, rejection, and unmet expectations. What did Rebecca do? She made a bold choice to cut herself free from a $1.5 million financial tie to her family's business, a decision that changed her life forever. Hi, I'm Sarah, and today we're diving into Rebecca's story, a powerful journey of standing up to a toxic family, reclaiming her independence, and finding true freedom. This isn't just about drama, it's about the courage to walk away from people who don't see your worth, something so many of us face. Whether it's parents who favor a sibling, pressure to follow their path, or even financial manipulation, Rebecca's story is a roadmap for breaking free. Think about someone like Sarah, a nurse I know from Ohio. She worked tirelessly to put herself through school, but her parents always bragged about her brother's big city job, barely mentioning her career saving lives, that feeling of being invisible. That's what Rebecca lived with, growing up in Boston's elite Beacon Hill, where her family's wealth hid a deeper dysfunction. Over the next hour, we'll explore 5 chapters of Rebecca's life, her suffocating childhood under her family's obsession with image, the tensions as she forged her own path, the betrayal of being used financially and excluded, the confrontation that uncovered shocking lies, and how she rebuilt her life with love and purpose. We'll share lessons, like how to spot toxic dynamics, and tips to avoid mistakes, backed by real data like how 40% of Americans face family conflict over money, per a 2023 Pew study. So, what's your story? Have you ever felt overlooked by family? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe to join us for more stories like this. Let's start with Rebecca's early years, a girl in a perfect-looking family. Learning that love came with strings attached. 1. Family background and dynamics. Let's step into the world of Rebecca Wilson, a world that looked like a postcard of the American dream but felt like a maze of pressure and unspoken rules. Rebecca grew up in Boston's Beacon Hill, a neighborhood where wealth and status are practically part of the address. For those of you not familiar with it, think of it as the kind of place where every house feels like a statement, not just a home. The Wilsons were no exception. Rebecca's father, Harold, was a real estate mogul who built Wilson properties from the ground up, turning empty lots into towering office buildings. Her mother, Diana, was the family's social strategist, planning every dinner party and charity event with the precision of a chess master, all to cement their place among Boston's elite. To the outside world, the Wilsons were perfect, wealthy, polished, untouchable. But for Rebecca, growing up in that world meant living under a microscope, where every move was judged, and love came with conditions. From her earliest memories, Rebecca learned there were rules, not the kind you'd write down, but the kind that shaped her life. Rebecca, fix your posture. Her mother would hiss at a fancy gala, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Rebecca, your grades are great, but Thomas made the debate team," her father would say, turning her 4.0 GPA into an afterthought. Thomas, her older brother by 3 years, was the star of the family show. He had their father's charm, their mother's knack for working a room, and a clear path to inherit Wilson properties. Rebecca, on the other hand, was the quiet one, bookish, serious, always asking why things couldn't be fairer. That's not how the real world works. Rebecca, Her father would snap, dismissing her questions about why Thomas always got the spotlight. It was a line she heard so often, it became the soundtrack of her childhood, a constant reminder that she didn't quite fit the family's mold. Does that ring a bell for anyone out there? Maybe you've got a sibling who always seemed to get the gold star, no matter what you did. In America, we grow up hearing that family is your rock, your safe place. But sometimes it feels more like a race you can't win. Rebecca's family wasn't loud or openly cruel, but the quiet kind of toxic, the kind that chips away at you. Psychologists call this conditional love, where you're only valued if you meet certain expectations. It's more common than we like to admit. A 2018 study from the Journal of Family Psychology found that 70% of people feel their parents favored one sibling over another, and that can leave scars that last a lifetime. Let me paint a picture of what this looked like for Rebecca. When she was 12, she won a statewide essay contest, a huge deal for a kid who loved writing. The local newspaper wanted to interview her, a chance to be seen for once. But her mother had other ideas. "The Wilson family presents as a unit," Diana said, scheduling a hair appointment that clashed with the interview. As she brushed Rebecca's hair, each stroke felt more like a reprimand than care. "Your accomplishment reflects on all of us," she said, "so we have to look perfect." When the reporter came, the family posed for a photo, Thomas front and center, smiling like it was his win, while Rebecca stood on the sidelines. That moment taught her a brutal truth. Her successes only mattered if they served the family's image. This wasn't a one-time thing. Her perfect grades. "Thomas closed a deal in his business club," her father would counter. "Her spot in a competitive summer program. Thomas is interning at the company," her mother would say, beaming. It was like Rebecca was always playing catch-up in a game rigged against her. If you've ever felt like your best wasn't enough for your family, you know that ache, the one that makes you wonder if you're the problem. To bring this closer to home, let me tell you about Lisa, a friend from Texas. She was the first in her family to go to college, majoring in engineering. But at every family barbecue, her parents would rave about her younger brother's football stats, barely mentioning her degree. "It felt like I was invisible unless I was doing something they could brag about," she told me. That's what Rebecca was up against. Except her family's wealth and status turned the pressure up to 11. In a world like Beacon Hill, being second best wasn't just personal, it was a public failure. So, what's happening here on a deeper level? Rebecca was stuck in what experts call a golden child versus scapegoat dynamic. Thomas was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while Rebecca was the scapegoat, always falling short. This isn't just bad parenting. It's a system that keeps everyone in line by making you compete for approval. For Rebecca, it meant growing up believing she wasn't enough, a belief that would shape her choices for years. Here's a mistake so many of us make: thinking family criticism is meant to help you grow. How many of you have heard, "We're just pushing you to be better," and bought into it? Rebecca did for years. She thought if she worked harder, won more awards, she'd finally earn her parents' pride. But that's a trap. In toxic families, criticism isn't about growth, it's about control. The lesson: your worth isn't tied to their approval. Recognizing that is the first step to breaking free. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in someone else's shadow? Maybe a sibling, a cousin, or even a friend your parents loved to compare you to? Drop a comment and share your story. It's those moments that connect us. And if this is hitting home, hit that subscribe button so we can keep digging into stories like Rebecca's. So, where does this leave our young Rebecca? She's smart, driven, but carrying the weight of a family that doesn't see her. As she grows up, she's about to make choices that will challenge everything her parents expect of her. How does she start to break free? And what happens when she does? Let's find out as we explore the tensions that defined her relationship with her parents. 2. Tensions with parents. Now that we've seen the pressure Rebecca faced growing up in a family obsessed with appearances, let's talk about what happened when she started to break free. Rebecca Wilson wasn't content to stay in the shadow of her brother, Thomas, or to follow the script her parents had written for her. She had her own dreams, and pursuing them put her on a collision course with her family's expectations. This chapter of her story is about the growing tensions that defined her relationship with her parents, tensions that pushed her to the edge and set the stage for the dramatic choices to come. It's a story of defiance, rejection, and the courage to choose yourself, even when it hurts. Rebecca's first big act of rebellion was setting her sights on Yale Law School. Her parents had other plans. Harvard Business School would keep you closer to home. Her father, Harold, said, but what he really meant was closer to Wilson Properties, the family's real estate empire. Harvard was the practical choice for a daughter they expected to eventually fold into the family business. But Yale was Rebecca's dream, a chance to carve out her own path in corporate law. When she got accepted with a partial scholarship, her parents' response was telling. "We'll cover the rest," Harold said, "but we expect you to bring that education back to Wilson Properties." It was less an offer of support and more a contract with strings attached. Rebecca refused to play along. She worked 3 campus jobs, tutoring, library shifts, waitressing to pay her own way, determined to owe them nothing. That choice wasn't just about money, it was about claiming her independence. But independence came at a cost. Every holiday back in Boston turned into a battlefield of passive-aggressive jabs. "Over dinner," her father would announce. Thomas closed the Henderson deal today, then casually add, "Rebecca, pass the potatoes," as if her Yale achievements were irrelevant. Her mother, Diana, wasn't much better. When Rebecca shared her law school successes, Diana would pivot to Thomas's latest networking event. It was like Rebecca's accomplishments were footnotes in the Wilson family story, never quite measuring up to Thomas, the heir apparent. Does that sound familiar? Maybe you've poured your heart into something, a degree, a job, a passion, only to have your family brush it off because it didn't fit their vision for you. After graduating from Yale, Rebecca took a job at Caldwell and Burke, a top corporate law firm in Chicago. It was a bold move, putting 800 miles between her and Boston's expectations. Her parents were not impressed. "Chicago is so far away," Diana complained. "There are excellent firms in Boston." Rebecca tried to explain, "This is the opportunity I've worked for." But her father's response cut deep. "Your brother is working for what really matters, family." To them, her choice to build a life on her own terms was a betrayal. In America, we celebrate striking out on your own. Think of the pioneers, the entrepreneurs, but when your family expects loyalty over ambition, that dream can feel like a fight. The tensions hit a new low when Rebecca brought her boyfriend, Marcus Johnson, to Boston for Thanksgiving. Marcus was everything the Wilsons weren't: a public high school English teacher, genuine, and dedicated to helping first-generation college students. To Rebecca, he was a breath of fresh air. To her parents, he was a disappointment. A teacher, her mother repeated, her tone dripping with judgment. When Marcus stepped away to take a call from a student, "Rebecca, you could have your pick of suitable partners. Why choose someone so limited?" Rebecca pushed back, "He's not limited. Mother, he's changing lives." Her father chimed in. At what salary? How will he contribute to your future? When Rebecca argued that not everything was about money, Harold laughed dismissively. Says someone who's never had to worry about it. The irony, Rebecca had been paying her own way since college, while Thomas, their golden child, was gliding into a VP role at Wilson Properties, engaged to Caroline, the daughter of a Massachusetts state senator. At dinner, her parents fawned over Caroline's political connections while asking Marcus what subway line he took to work. That night, in her childhood bedroom, Rebecca broke down in Marcus's arms. "They'll never see me," she whispered. "No matter what I achieve." His response was simple but powerful. "Their loss. I see you, Rebecca. You're extraordinary. Let's make this real for you. I know a woman named Emily from California. She moved across the country to pursue a career in graphic design, something her parents called a hobby compared to her sister's real job in finance. When Emily brought her partner, a musician, to meet her family, they barely hid their disapproval, asking about his backup plan while praising her sister's corporate fiancé. It felt like I was being judged for who I loved and what I chose, she told me. That's exactly what Rebecca was facing. Parents who couldn't value her choices because they didn't align with their vision of success. What's happening here psychologically? Rebecca's parents were enforcing what experts call parental favoritism, where one child's path is celebrated while another's is diminished. A 2020 study in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that 65% of adults felt their parents' favoritism impacted their self-esteem well into adulthood. For Rebecca, this wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was about a family that saw her as a tool for their agenda, not a person with her own dreams. In American culture, where we're told to follow your passion, this kind of rejection can feel like a double betrayal. You're defying family, but you're also fighting for the values we're taught to cherish. Here's a common mistake: chasing approval from people who've already decided you're not enough. Rebecca kept trying calling to share her Yale acceptance, her job offer hoping for a scrap of pride. But each time, she got polite disinterest or a pivot to Thomas. The lesson: you can't earn love from people who tie it to their own goals. Instead, surround yourself with those who see your worth without conditions, like Marcus did for Rebecca. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to defend your life choices to your family? Maybe it was a career, a partner, or just being yourself. Drop a comment below and share where you're watching from. I read everyone. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button to keep exploring stories like this with us. So, Rebecca's building a life on her terms, but the cost is clear: a growing rift with her parents. What happens when they pull her back into their world with a request she can't ignore, a financial tie that tests her loyalty? Let's dive into the moment that pushed her to the breaking point. 3. Financial entanglement and exclusion. We've seen Rebecca Wilson carve out her own path, defying her parents' expectations by choosing Yale Law School and a career in Chicago over the family business. But even as she built a life on her terms, her family found a way to pull her back in, not with love, but with a request that tied her to their empire in a way she never expected. This chapter of Rebecca's story is about a $1.5 million loan, a devastating betrayal, and a single text message that pushed her to take back her power. It's a story that hits at the heart of what happens when family and finances mix, and it's one that might feel all too familiar. 3 years ago, Rebecca's father, Harold, called her with what he called a small favor. Wilson Properties, his real estate empire, was expanding, and they needed a $1.5 million loan for a new development. The banks wanted extra security, and Harold zeroed in on Rebecca's stellar credit score, Family helps family, he said, framing it as a duty rather than a choice. Rebecca hesitated. Her boyfriend, Marcus, a grounded high school teacher, urged her to think twice. Mixing family and money is rarely simple. But the weight of her father's words, that rare moment of seeming to value her, pulled her in. Against her better judgment, she co-signed the loan, tying herself financially to a business she had no control over. Looking back, she realized that was the only time Harold ever praised her for something that benefited him, not her. Fast forward to 3 weeks before everything changed. Rebecca and Marcus flew to Boston for a celebratory dinner. Her brother, Thomas, and his fiancée, Caroline, had just announced they were expecting the first Wilson grandchild. The event was lavish, held at a rooftop restaurant, with champagne and talk of legacy. But the night turned sour fast. Rebecca's mother, Diana, greeted her with a backhanded comment about her dress, implying she hadn't followed the family's unspoken dress code. During dinner, her parents fawned over Thomas's promotion to senior partner at Wilson Properties and Caroline's political connections, barely acknowledging Rebecca's role in a billion-dollar merger at her law firm. Then came the bombshell. Caroline asked if Rebecca would bring Marcus to the upcoming family reunion, a Boston magazine feature for elite families. Rebecca froze. Family reunion, I haven't heard anything about it. Her mother brushed it off. It must have slipped my mind. It's at the Cape House, 4th of July weekend. Her father avoided her gaze, focusing on his lobster. Later that night, as Marcus grabbed their coats, Rebecca overheard the truth in the hotel lobby. Her parents were talking with Thomas and Caroline. We thought it best not to have Rebecca and her teacher at the reunion. Harold said, "The Bradfords are bringing the governor, and the Merrick's son from Goldman Sachs is attending. It needs to be the right atmosphere." Her mother added, "Rebecca's chosen a different path. We've told everyone she's too busy with work." Thomas pushed back. "She's family. Shouldn't she be there?" But Diana dismissed it. "This is about legacy." Rebecca's heart sank. Not only had they excluded her, but they'd lied to the family to protect their image, ashamed of her and Marcus. Back in Chicago, Rebecca threw herself into her work on the Willis merger, trying to drown out the hurt. Then, during a critical meeting with senior partners, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her father. "Don't try coming to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now." Thomas agrees. "This is what's best for the family business and image moving forward." 14 words that felt like a knife. Rebecca kept her composure, delivering her presentation flawlessly, but inside, she was reeling. 34 years of trying to earn her parents' love, and it ended with a text. In that moment, she made a decision. She called Marcus. "They've cut me off." Then she called her attorney, Jennifer, to research her options. As a co-signer, Rebecca was on the hook for the $1.5 million loan if Wilson Properties defaulted a risk she could no longer tolerate. "Draft the paperwork." She told Jennifer, "I'm removing my name." Let's pause. Have you ever been blindsided by family in a way that made you question everything? Maybe it was a broken promise or a moment you realized you weren't as valued as you thought. This is where Rebecca's story hits home. Mixing family and finances is a minefield. A 2020 Federal Trade Commission report says 40% of co-signers end up liable for loans they didn't control, often because they trusted family without clear boundaries. Rebecca's parents used her credit to prop up their business, then discarded her when she didn't fit their image. It's a betrayal that's both financial and emotional. Here's a real-world example. My friend David from New York co-signed a car loan for his sister, thinking he was helping her get back on her feet. But when she missed payments, creditors came after him, tanking his credit score. "I thought family meant we had each other's backs," he said, "but I was just a means to an end." That's what Rebecca felt used, then discarded. Psychologically, this is about manipulation through guilt. Families like the Wilsons leverage family loyalty to get what they want, making you feel obligated to say yes. Rebecca fell for it, thinking co-signing would finally earn her a place at the table. The mistake not setting boundaries. She trusted her father without verifying the risks, a common error when family asks for financial help. The lesson: always protect your financial independence. If Rebecca had consulted a lawyer first, she might have avoided the trap. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pressured into a financial decision by family? Drop a comment below and share where you're watching from. I read everyone. If this is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button to keep exploring stories like Rebecca's. So, Rebecca's made her move, cutting the financial tie. But what happens when her family finds out? Will they try to pull her back? Or will the truth about their actions come to light? Let's dive into the confrontation that changed everything. 4. Confrontation and deceptions uncovered. We've watched Rebecca Wilson navigate a childhood of conditional love, defy her parents' expectations, and face a devastating betrayal when they excluded her from the family and used her financially. Now, we're at the turning point, the moment when everything comes to a head. Picture Rebecca, a 34-year-old lawyer, sitting across from her parents in a Chicago hotel, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. This is the confrontation that uncovers shocking deceptions and forces Rebecca to stand her ground. It's a story of truth breaking through lies, and it's a moment that might resonate with anyone who's ever had to face hard realities about their family. The meeting was set for noon at the Palmer House, a historic Chicago hotel where Rebecca agreed to meet her parents after her father's text cut her out of the family. Her brother, Thomas, had convinced her to hear them out, promising closure. She arrived prepared, her attorney's advice in mind, ready to stand firm on her decision to remove her name from the $1.5 million loan she'd co-signed for Wilson Properties. Her father, Harold, wasted no time. "You've put us in an impossible position," he said, his voice tight with anger. "The bank is demanding more collateral we don't have. We're selling assets at a loss. This is vindictive and childish." Her mother, Diana, tried to soften the blow. "Sweetheart, we know you were hurt by your father's message. It was poorly worded, a moment of frustration. We don't want to cut ties." But Rebecca wasn't buying it. "Don't try coming to the family reunion. We've decided it's best we cut ties for now." Thomas agrees. She quoted her father's text. "Seems pretty clear to me." Diana flinched, but Harold doubled down. "Your lifestyle, your teacher boyfriend, your corporate law career doesn't fit the Wilson family image we're building, especially with the Bradfords and the governor involved." For once, the truth was out. Rebecca was bad for the brand. Then came the bombshell. Thomas arrived unexpectedly, looking frazzled. "This has gone too far," he said, sitting beside Rebecca. He turned to her. "Dad never consulted me about cutting you out. I found out when you did." Harold tried to interrupt, but Thomas pressed on. "There's something you need to know about that loan. 3 years ago, Wilson Properties was in deep trouble. Cost overruns, permit issues, a failing project. Dad used your credit score not just for better terms, but to avoid bankruptcy." Diana gasped, stunned. "Harold, is this true?" she asked. Harold brushed it off. "Business has ups and downs. I handled it. But Thomas wasn't done. "That's not all. I had our financial officer review the paperwork. Rebecca, your signature is on 2 other loans, equipment financing from 2020 and a line of credit from 2021. Rebecca's stomach dropped. "That's impossible," she said. "I never signed those." Thomas slid documents across the table. The signatures looked like hers, but she spotted subtle differences. "You forged my signature," she said, staring at her father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "It was necessary for the business," he muttered. "Temporary measures." Rebecca's legal mind kicked in. That's fraud, criminal fraud. Let's take a moment. Have you ever discovered a lie from someone you trusted? That gut-wrenching realization that they used you? Rebecca's story shows how family betrayal cuts deepest. Financially, those forged loans put her at risk. Identity theft costs Americans $56 billion a year, per a 2021 Javelin Strategy report, and family members are often the culprits. Psychologically, this was a power play. Harold used Rebecca when it suited him, then discarded her when she didn't fit the image. It's a classic tactic in toxic families: control through manipulation, banking on guilt to keep you quiet. Here's a real-world example. My friend Rachel from Florida helped her parents refinance their home, signing as a guarantor because they said it was for the family. Months later, she found out they'd taken out additional loans in her name without telling her, nearly ruining her credit when they missed payments. "I felt like a fool for trusting them," she said. That's what Rebecca faced. Her father's family helps family line was a lie to exploit her. The mistake Rebecca made ignoring red flags. Harold's vague, "It's just a formality," when she co-signed should have raised alarms. But she wanted to believe in family loyalty. The lesson: trust your instincts, especially with money. If something feels off, verify it, get a lawyer, check the fine print. Thomas's honesty was a lifeline, showing that even in toxic families, unexpected allies can emerge. I want to hear from you. Have you ever been burned by a family member's financial request? Share your story in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I read everyone. If this hits home, hit that subscribe button to keep exploring stories like Rebecca's. Rebecca stood firm, refusing to reinstate the loan. But how does she move forward after such a betrayal? What happens when the dust settles and she starts rebuilding her life? Let's find out in the final chapter of her journey. 5. Resolution and personal transformation. We've followed Rebecca Wilson through a childhood of conditional love, a bold break from her parents' expectations, a painful financial betrayal, and a confrontation that exposed her father's lies. Now, we reach the heart of her story, the resolution that set her free and the transformation that redefined her life. This is where Rebecca steps out of the shadows of her family's rejection and into a future built on her own terms. It's a story of healing, love, and finding a new definition of family, one that might inspire you to rethink what matters most in your own life. After the explosive meeting at the Palmer House, where Rebecca learned her father had forged her signature on loans, the fallout was swift. Her father, Harold, tried to fight back, threatening legal action to force her to reinstate her guarantee on the $1.5 million loan. But when his lawyers saw the forged documents Thomas uncovered, they backed off fast. Wilson Properties scrambled and secured alternative financing, swallowing higher interest rates to keep the business afloat. It wasn't a collapse, just an inconvenience, as Rebecca's attorney, Jennifer, had predicted. For Rebecca, it was a clean break, no more financial ties to a family that had used her. Then came a surprise. A week later, her mother, Diana, called. her voice lacking its usual polished tone. "Rebecca, I had no idea about the loans, about any of it," she said. "Your father and I are taking time apart. I'm staying with my sister in Connecticut." For the first time, Diana admitted fault. "I was so focused on our social image that I didn't see what it cost you. You were right, we didn't support you." It wasn't a full apology, but it was more than Rebecca had ever heard. Her mother's decision to separate from Harold was a shock Rebecca had never seen her defy him before. It was a crack in the Wilson family facade, a sign that change was possible, even if it was late. Thomas, her brother, stepped up too. He started calling regularly, not just to apologize for his silence, but to rebuild their relationship. "I was complicit," he admitted. "I benefited from Dad's favoritism and didn't speak up when I should have." When Thomas and his fiancée, Caroline, visited Chicago, they invited Rebecca and Marcus to dinner. It was awkward at first. Decades of family dynamics don't vanish overnight, but it was a start. "Caroline thinks you're brilliant," Thomas told her later. "She says I'm lucky to have such a formidable sister." For Rebecca, it was a glimpse of a sibling bond not defined by their parents' rules. Professionally, Rebecca was thriving. Her work on the Willis merger, a billion-dollar deal, was a resounding success. Her boss, Patricia, called her in. "Rebecca, this is exceptional. The partners are putting you on track for early partnership." Her name now appeared on the firm's website. Rebecca Wilson, Senior Associate, Partnership Track. It was a moment of pride, earned through her own grit, not her family's name. But the real transformation was personal. Rebecca started therapy with Dr. Levine, a specialist in family trauma. "You can't change your past," Dr. Levine said, "but you can change how it shapes your future. What do you want that future to look like?" That question unlocked something in Rebecca. She'd spent her life measuring her worth by her parents' impossible standards, accepting emotional scraps instead of love. Therapy helped her see that she could choose who deserved a place in her life. The turning point came one evening by Lake Michigan. Marcus, her rock, took her for a walk at sunset. He knelt in the sand, his hands trembling as he opened a small velvet box. "Rebecca Wilson, you're the strongest, most brilliant person I've ever known. Will you marry me?" Her answer was easy. Yes, absolutely yes. That moment, with the man who loved her without conditions, crystallized what family could be. When she shared the news, Thomas texted to confirm he'd attend their engagement dinner. Diana sent flowers with a note. "I'd love to be there if you want me." Her father stayed silent, but for Rebecca, that silence was peace she no longer needed his approval. Let's pause. Have you ever had to walk away from someone to find yourself? Rebecca's story shows what's possible when you let go of toxic ties. A 2022 American Psychological Association study says 80% of therapy clients report better well-being after addressing family trauma. Rebecca's journey reflects that through therapy, love, and courage, she redefined family as mutual respect, not obligation. Here's a real-world example. My friend Alex from Colorado grew up with parents who pushed him to be a doctor, dismissing his passion for teaching. When he chose education, they called it a waste. Years later, he cut contact and built a life with friends who celebrated him. "It was like breathing for the first time," he said. That's what Rebecca found freedom in choosing her own people. The mistake Rebecca nearly made, holding onto her family out of guilt, hoping they'd change. It's a trap many fall into, staying tethered to toxic relationships because they're family. The lesson, freedom, comes from letting go. Build a chosen family, people like Marcus. who see you for you. I want to hear from you. Conclusion: Rebecca Wilson's journey to freedom. We've walked through Rebecca Wilson's incredible journey, and what a ride it's been. From a childhood in Boston's Beacon Hill, where she was overshadowed by her family's obsession with image, to defying their expectations by forging her own path at Yale and in Chicago. We saw the sting of betrayal when her parents used her financially, excluded her from the family, and sent a text cutting ties. Then came the confrontation that laid bare her father's lies, forged loans, and hidden motives. And finally, we witnessed Rebecca's transformation, rebuilding her life with a supportive partner, a mending bond with her brother, and a newfound sense of freedom. Her story isn't just about breaking free from a toxic family, it's about discovering that your worth comes from within, not from those who fail to see it. Let's recap the lessons we've learned from Rebecca. First, your value isn't tied to anyone's approval. Even family, your achievements are enough, whether it's a 4.0 GPA or a quiet act of courage. Second, protect your financial independence. Never sign something without knowing the risks, especially for family. Third, trust your instincts when something feels off. Red flags, like her father's vague promises, are warnings. Fourth, seek allies, like Thomas, who can surprise you with support. And most importantly, build a chosen family, people like Marcus, who love you for you, not for what you can do for them. These aren't just ideas, they're tools to navigate life. A 2023 Pew Research study found that 40% of Americans face family conflict over money or expectations. So Rebecca's story is more universal than you might think. Here's a real-world example to bring it home. I know a guy named Mike from Texas who spent years trying to win his parents' approval by working in their family restaurant. Even though he dreamed of being a writer, they called his writing a pipe dream and praised his sister's business degree instead. Finally, Mike walked away, moved to Austin, and started freelancing. It was scary, but he found friends who cheered his first published story. I realized family isn't just blood, he said. It's the people who show up for you. Like Rebecca, Mike learned that freedom comes from choosing who gets to be in your corner. The biggest mistake we make: holding onto toxic relationships out of guilt, thinking they're family means you owe them everything. Rebecca nearly did, co-signing that loan to feel valued. The lesson: you deserve relationships that lift you up, not tear you down. Take a page from Rebecca's book, Set Boundaries, Seek Therapy if you need it. 80% of therapy clients report better well-being, per a 2022 APA study, and surround yourself with people who see your worth. So, what's your next step? If Rebecca's story resonates, do one thing today. Maybe it's saying no to a request that feels wrong, calling a therapist to unpack old wounds, or thanking someone who's been your Marcus. You're the author of your story, just like Rebecca became hers soon-to-be partner, soon-to-be married, free from her family's shadow. What chapter will you write next? I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away to find yourself? Drop your story in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one. If this journey inspired you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for joining me in Rebecca's story. Remember, your worth isn't defined by those who can't see it, but by the courage you find to honor it yourself.